Hey guys, jAyMaC here again, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to make an FM squishy bass using any DAW, because in my last video where I showed you how to make the bass from First of the Year by Skrillex, I used an instrument rack with a macro knob and controlled the FM matrix directly using the Live's instrument rack. And in this video I'm going to show you how to do it using the XY pad inside FM8. I'll get to that later. So I put together a quick loop to show you stuff, and it sounds like this. Well, that's with it vocoded. I'm actually using Seamless's vocals to do this, and they sound pretty funny on their own. Just watch this. Yeah, there you go. Anyway, the growl you're interested in is going to be this one. And that's my modulator, no, it's my carrier, sorry, yeah. So let's get to creating this. I've prepared a patch which is the same as this growl except with no automation ability, so now it just sounds like a sine wave. It'll sound like this. So that's this patch. Yeah, anyway. I've created it so that I can drag up on E and F, which will just control the amount of total modulation into the main operator. So it sounds like this. Also, because of the way I've set the velocity knobs, playing different velocities does make quite a big difference. So watch this. If you don't know how I'm changing the velocity, I'm just using the C and V keys on the keyboard, which if you have the computer keyboard or computer MIDI keyboard option active in Ableton, those Z and X change octave up and down, and C and V change velocity up and down. So yeah, I thought that was helpful if you don't know that. Anyway, what I did use to make the growl was I used the Easy/Morph tab here, and I used this XY pad in the corner. Basically, I made this patch so that when the selector is in the bottom left quadrant, there is no growl modulation, and when the selector is in the bottom right quadrant, there is maximum growl. So I can show you how to do that. What you want to do is first, you keep your XY pad in the default bottom left quadrant, which was where it comes as an initialized patch. Make your patch. I'm not going to go into the details of this patch because it's just for demonstrations, but basically you want to make it so that it's not growling. So leave it at that. And then go to the Easy/Morph tab and click Normalize Timbers, which will copy the settings you have in the quadrant that's currently selected to every other quadrant, so now you won't have any changes in these quadrants when you move the selector around. Now, when you do that, it automatically deactivates any operators that aren't being, any operators whose volume levels are at 0. So you're going to need to turn them back on again, so just right-click on them in every state. And it will then, that will turn them all on. So what you want to do is move your selector to the default state or your minimum state, then keep it at 0, move your selector to the maximum state, and then drag all the way up and make it growl to the full. And you'll notice that the selector turns red. That's because you have two quadrants, or one or more quadrants that do not have the same settings. If you were to have both quadrants or all quadrants with the same settings, your selector would turn gray, meaning that the XY pad is inactive and not doing anything. So I can show you what it sounds like right now. And there we go, magic, you have a growl. So to automate this, I'm not sure how you would do it in any other programs, but in Ableton Live, you just you expand the modulation options by clicking on this arrow and click Configure, and just ruffle around with the selector pad, and it will automatically give you Morph X and Morph Y available to automate. And I already have modulation drawn in my MIDI clip. I can show you, I have pitch bends here, and I use Morph X modulated like this, and Morph Y, I have my curves like that. So, back to FM8. You might notice that I have some sort of a different sound at one point. So if I solo the actual growl, I'll show you what I'm talking about. That's actually because I'm using a high-pass filter at that point. So if we were to turn that high-pass filter off, it would just sound like this. So it sounds quite boring. So what I did to make that was I just used the Z operator inside FM8. You might have noticed from the beginning, I had everything F, main operator F, routed through Z. And what I did was I just used the X-axis to control the amount of growl, and the Y-axis to control the filter amount. So I'm going to go to operator Z. These settings are the same for every quadrant at the moment. I've initialized or normalized all the quadrants to this. I'm only using filter 1, so I made sure the mix was all the way to the left. And I'm using the filter in mode 100, because in mode 0, where it comes default, it's actually a low-pass filter, and that's going to not have the same sound. So you want to push it all the way up to 100 to morph it into a high-pass filter. I left the resonance at 50 because I thought it sounded pretty good there, so that's where it comes as default. And cutoff is 0. Now, when Y is at minimum, you're going to want the cutoff to be 0, and when Y is at maximum, you want the cutoff to be 100. So that means, but you also have to consider that when X is at minimum, you want your growl to be 0, and then when X is at maximum, your growl to be 100. So you have to think carefully about this, but I'm going to make sure that X is maximum here and in the top right corner, which is where I want the growl to be maximum. But in the top right corner, Y is also at maximum, so I'm going to push the cutoff of the filter all the way up to 100. And now I'll get something that sounds like this. There you go, and you have the sound. So basically what you would do now is just automate X and Y like I have done in my MIDI clip, and you will get a sound that sounds like this. I'm not getting the filter amount. That's quite strange. That is because in the top left quadrant, Y is also at maximum, and I've forgotten to push the filter up all the way. So do that as well, and then you'll get this sound. Perfect. And then after that, I went on to use this as a carrier and just did my standard vocoder setup. The only thing I have several things different. I've got a lot more compression basically everywhere. This is a maximizer that I based off the sound of Fruity Loops Sound Goodizer. You can probably do the same thing with multi-band compression, and like lots of just compression everywhere is what I used. But if you have FL Studio, just use the Sound Goodizer. I thought that sounded good. Anyway, my distortion overdrive to restore the highs is also different. I have a 2-stage distortion system, which is different from my 1-stage distortion system back in my first of the year video. Anyway, this one I'm distorting at 9.8 kilohertz, just a little bit. And then I'm distorting the extreme highs at 18 kilohertz with quite a lot. 18 kilohertz is coincidentally where the vocoder's maximum range ends. I would have liked Ableton to have enabled us to go to 20 kilohertz, but they didn't, and I just live with it. It doesn't really bother me that much because I can do this overdrive thing. But in any case, this sound, I think it sounds quite nice. If you turn them off, it sounds like this. And if you turn them on, it sounds like this. It makes quite a difference to me. Anyway, I think that's about... Oh yeah, there's one more thing I have to show you, just a little tip. If you don't have FL Studio and you want the sound of the Sound Goodizer, because I actually like the way it sounds, it's a nice maximizer, you can get this VST called jAyMaC. This was actually made by a programmer at ImageLine a long time ago, back before the Sound Goodizer existed as a plugin inside FL Studio. They made it as a test to see how the general public would react to it, and the reaction was quite positive, so they ended up making it into Sound Goodizer. But the best thing about this one is, as Sound Goodizer is not a VST plugin, but this is a 32-bit VST plugin, so you can use it in any DAW that is compatible with the 32-bit VST protocol. And it is... I think it is exactly the same as Sound Goodizer. I haven't noticed any differences. So yeah, you can get that FL Studio sound using any other DAW. I would advise you not to overuse it, because then you'll get angry people breathing down your neck. So yeah, I think it makes the FM growl sound nice. If I turn it off, I'll show you the difference. And then I enable it. It just maximizes the whole sound. So that's all I have to show you for this tutorial. I hope you've learned something, I hope I've been helpful, and I will see you later.